Today, you will be listening to Laura McMillan. She is our VP of Training Development. Laura joined the company this past year after having worked with us at two of our clients, Schneider National and Rail Transport. She has both a master's degree in adult learning as well as a Class A CDL, so it's really not that big of a surprise she's been honored by different trucking groups over the past 20 years for her safety and training programs. In her role as VP of Training Development, she leads our services group that helps clients develop custom training and safety programs. And before I hand this off to her, I just want to clear up one quick, nasty internet rumor I was just reading. There is no truth whatsoever to the fact that Laura is doing this webinar because she lost a bet over the NFC Championship game between her Green Bay Packers and our beloved Seattle Seahawks. So with that, I will try to hand this off to Laura. Laura, if you can unmute yourself, you are free to go. And when I say go, I mean stay and present. All right, you should be unmuted. Are you there, Laura?
Yes, I am. Hello.
Woohoo!
You had to mention the Packers.
I
My
did.
poor Packers.
I did.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's okay. I've gotten past that. I can be happy for either team that wins the Super Bowl. Uh, Welcome, everyone. We're glad to have you join us today for the Time Crunch Safety Manager presentation. I really appreciate you taking the time on the topic of time crunch because our time is so precious. So I appreciate the time you're putting forth into joining us today. I did a quick analysis of the number of folks that signed up for this presentation against a little data tool that calculates the cost of meetings. And given that we had over 100 participants sign up for today, the relative cost and time value of everyone collectively on the call is about $5,000 for the hour. So my goal today is that you walk away with an idea or a way to return investment to your organizations of at least $5,000, if not more. So let's see how we do with that. Okay, so our agenda today is that we're going to be spending a lot of time getting oriented and anchored on something I call the success formula. We're also going to be talking about best practices of leading safety-oriented companies that have adopted the safety success formula and have achieved great success in their organizations. And really what you'll find in that success formula is a big factor is leadership, and specifically moving from reactive to proactive and even predictive leadership. And we're going to talk about those qualities. And finally, to help punctuate the learnings here, we're going to talk through case studies. Now, I want to say up front that the case studies are from my years of working with carriers over the last 10 plus years in helping them achieve and grow their safety cultures. And they're not necessarily ITI clients. However, in the spirit of moving in the right direction and growing their organizations, they are following the success formula that we certainly advocate here at ITI. So as Tom mentioned, we have a little interactivity here, and I'm going to post a survey question that should show up on your screen, and you'll have the opportunity to vote on this. So I want to just out of the gate ask you, how does your company leadership view driver training? And let me just get that question up here. I have to choose it from my list, so give me just a second here. Okay, you should have a couple of options show up on your screen. So we'll give folks a moment to respond, and you'll see the results here on the screen. And just about everybody has responded here. So gosh, it looks like the front runner here is that leadership in your organizations views driver training as a worthwhile investment that improves your safety culture, and that's great to see. Because if they're not seeing that, or if there's an opportunity to turn some leaders around, I want to share with you some slides that speak to the value of training as an investment that is necessary to your organization. So in this slide, this talks about the case for training and avoiding just one crash. On the left-hand side, you'll see samples of different accident and crash-related costs. You could also presume these might be workman's comp or lost time injuries as well. But the point here is that at the face value of that accident cost, depending on the revenue and margin of your organizations at 4, 3, or 2%, you can see the relative revenue that is required for that organization, your organization, to compensate for the face value of that accident. So you can see even at the top line of $25,000, which is probably a hit fixed object type of incident, damaged building, cargo claim, something on that level, that even at a 4% margin, $625,000 becomes a burden to the organization in profit margin to be able to compensate for that accident cost. And at a 2% margin, it escalates quickly to over $1 million. So you see, it's not very sustainable to have, whether it be high frequency, low dollar crashes, or certainly major crashes at these given face values. It becomes a very unsustainable picture from a revenue profit generation side to your organization to survive. Training absolutely makes a difference and can help manage and avoid not just one crash, but several, which is vital to your organizations. Now, why is that such an escalated burden of revenue and margin to attain? That's because the direct cost of the crash is that face value. It's the settlement amount, lost wages, higher insurance premiums. That's the tip of the iceberg, if you will. What drives that greater actual cost of the accident are all of the indirect costs, which amount to 5 to 50 times of that direct cost. So that is why you're seeing an incredible, difference between what the face value is and what the actual impact on your organizations are. So the $1 million question, does training make a difference? Absolutely. Let's just look at one KPI, one metric that's important to all organizations and folks on the phone is CSA scores. We're all taking a much closer look at this since it's gone live and there's more enforcement teeth in CSA. So when we look at as a standardized snapshot, if you will, of CSA scores at a given point in time for the entire industry, at least back in 2011, these were the scores. Some of these well above threshold and not where they need to be. So the industry, of course, you have a mixture of players there, and you would expect to see some variance and some bad actors, if you will, that are putting a negative slant on these numbers. Now, if we take some of our internal research data and put that against it, when we look at clients that are utilizing courseware to address CSA and improve their CSA scores, we see that even a modest level of use of our clients that are using a product can substantially reduce and improve CSA scores. But here's the really important bar I want you to pay attention to, is the yellow bar that pops on the screen here. And that's really the clients, again from internal research, clients that use our courseware and use it on a consistent basis. So it stands to reason if it makes an improvement at a modest level, that more of it will create a downward trend of these scores and improve your organization. So certainly in this area of CSA, training, even at a modest, but even more importantly at a consistent basis, can make a difference for your organization. Here's another chart that illustrates much of the same thing, but the general pattern here, looking more closely at unsafe driving as the basic score for organizations that may be hovering at a higher point in terms of unsafe driving. The more online training sessions they do, the greater the frequency, from 4, 6, 8 to over 10, the lower their basic score goes down in this area. And the same can be said for other basic areas. This example is unsafe driving. By the way, and I'll just insert this as a factoid, that in working with many carriers, what I have found in focusing on CSA scores and improvement your best gain or your fastest improvement gain is focusing on lowering your unsafe driving basic and vehicle inspections, two which tend to be thorny for most carriers. But even if they're not rising problems in your organization, you have a lot to gain basically from focusing on unsafe driving and on vehicle inspections. And why is that? Because 80%, the research out there from folks that track all of the research data on CSA, the research shows that over 80% of all CSA violations, and there's over 870 violations for CSA, 80% of all CSA violations that a carrier could receive stem from unsafe driving and or vehicle inspections. Why is that? If there are visible vehicle defects or your drivers are speeding, they're going to be tagged by law enforcement and a roadside inspection ensues, and that's where your CSA violation points come from. So just a pointer there on CSA. So I mentioned formula for success. In my years of working with carriers that are successful, but also in working with carriers that say, hey, we're struggling, we can't seem to find our way with getting an initiative off the ground or getting the results we want to see. When I have been going in and diagnosing with these organizations, what I find is that the successful organizations are applying the formula for success, which is leadership plus focus plus a structured curriculum or program plus disciplined delivery. All of those factors together, working together, create success out of a particular initiative or training program. When I find clients that are not achieving the results they expect to see, they are failing in one or more of these important areas. And we're going to talk through that a little bit with these case studies to illustrate that. But all of these factors coming together, a focus from a leadership perspective is going to help increase your probability for success. And I'll say right up front, leadership is listed first for a reason. Safety leadership, in particular you on the call here as a safety leader, you make all the difference between success and not so much success in your organizations. So here are the top ways that safety training programs fail. There's no top-down support or lack of leadership. No lack of leadership, no inspiration, no vision, no shared vision, no cascading of that vision is occurring. And so a program can quickly fall apart without that. A lack of buy-in organizationally, and that really stems from leadership, and in particular communicating the vision of a safety culture and safety improvements, and cascading that communication throughout the whole organization, not just keeping it at the top, but cascading it through the various levels. A lack of focus is a problem, trying to fix too many things. We're going to talk about a few companies that have lots and lots of issues, lots of problems to fix. Sometimes it's helpful just to choose the critical few. More often than not, it's more important to choose 1, 2, no more than 3 areas to focus on. And that sounds kind of minimal, but really there's more to gain by focusing and applying discipline and delivery in a structured program and strong leadership vision around 2 or 3 at most issues. And you'll reap the benefits of that more so than spreading yourself too thin. Building versus buying. Many carriers or fleets find, hey, we want to pursue an initiative or program, but we want to try to build it ourselves. We want to do it ourselves. And that's a very noble thought, and immediately what drives that, of course, is cost containment is the concern, or a sense that we're different, what I call the snowflake principle. We're different from everyone. We have a special way of doing things. But I will tell you that there are times when it makes sense to look outside for a partner that can do things more quickly or can provide you an off-the-shelf solution to get you going and focus on execution more quickly. A choice to build basically becomes its own focus. We just talked about focus and having too many things on our plate to focus on. Choosing to build things in-house when your core competency as an organization is moving freight or logistics, choosing to try to build training becomes a part-time job on your staff members, and it ultimately becomes its own focus, trying to get people skilled enough to build training and turn it around quickly so you can focus on execution of the training and the delivery, which is the only way you're going to see success. Poor execution. not putting, having a good plan, a good vision, but not sorting through the logistics, not setting it up for success, not having the right players in place, champions for the initiative, and people that will execute well. You can have the greatest looking plan or program on paper, but if it's not executed well, sorry, no success there. And lastly, no results tracking. Again, you can have a great program, but if there's no thought as to what exactly you're trying to improve and how you're going to measure moving the needle on that particular safety issue, it's very difficult to then come back to the top of this list and continue to enlist leadership and buy-in from the organization with no results to prove the effect or impact of your initiative. So I'm going to talk through a quick case study here. We'll have a few of these, but I want to talk about an organization that many people know is Werner Enterprises, very large carrier. And I'm just going to talk through a set of challenges that they had that they decided to focus on. Now, Werner, again, very large organization, lots of different problems, lots of different issues that they concern themselves with. What they chose to really focus, though, on was new hire turnover and poor fuel utilization. Like many carriers, they're struggling with driver turnover, and since they are very focused on 100% optimization of their equipment and their drivers, that's a concern, but so is fuel utilization. So the solution in the program we put together, and I worked with them on, is we started small. We started in the headquarters location. Now, Werner's located in Omaha, Nebraska, and they have a very nice headquarters facility. But most drivers that drive for Werner do not go through the Omaha location. They go through other terminals around the country that are high flow through. So Omaha headquarters, but not a lot of drivers go through that. Nonetheless, they wanted to start the program there, so they had the talent there. They had resources to deploy the solution, trial it out on a smaller basis, and see what results they got. So, smart idea: start small, go big. We redesigned the new inexperienced driver program from a 2-day to a 4-day program. So that was an investment in expanding the program, and we realized part of making that move was the fact that there was a very short orientation program for inexperienced drivers, and they were then handed off to an over-the-road trainer network, a very large over-the-road training network. And so the safety team sort of lost sight of what happens to these inexperienced drivers and realized that some of that abrupt handoff, not really connecting with those inexperienced drivers coming in the first couple of days, may have been creating this turnover issue. And so we redesigned new inexperienced driver training to a 4-day program, more assessment, surveying the driver's skill, meeting fleet manager, more quality put into that 4-day program, more backing exercises, etc. For the fleet side, we focused on a fuel MPG campaign. We did internal marketing to create buy-in across the organization, to get operations leaders to understand why we were expanding the new driver program and also the fuel initiative. There was an effort made to revise lesson plans to get all trainers who would be working with inexperienced drivers in the fleet on fuel management on the same page. Again, very diverse, distributed networks, so getting everyone to say the same thing, sing from the same hymnal is a challenge. So we put that communication and training plan with over-the-road trainers and all of the folks that would be responsible for performance support of drivers going through this effort. The net effect is that Werner was able to reduce the turnover rate by 10%, monetized out that to several $100,000 in return revenue for Werner, and then a fuel improvement at 1.5%. Now that looks very modest, but those of you who track on fuel utilization know that small percentages expanded fleet-wide are real dollar savings. So needless to say, they were thrilled with these results, and now their effort is taking this program out more nationally, taking it out into the other terminal locations where there are more drivers. So again, Werner in the success formula, their safety leadership recognized there's many issues, but they decided on 2 important areas where they could make a difference. They focused, put a program together, and then they really focused on discipline and delivery, and they achieved success. Got another survey question here for folks. And this one, I want to understand how many people are on your team. Okay, you should see the poll on your page here. So go ahead and vote there. Well, lots of numbers. Okay, most everyone's voted here. Okay, so we have quite a mix across the board. We have nearly 30% of the folks on the call are a safety team of one, and 45% have 2 to 5, and then about 14% with 6 or more, and even on the high side, 10 or more folks on the safety team. So a lot of variance here in terms of our participants and the responsibilities that you have on your team. So it can be difficult to get things done when you're a team of one or a very small team, right? We don't have unlimited resource. How do we compound the effect of our collective efforts or a singular effort when we have few people? Want to share a quick case study here of Kraft Foods. This is a safety team of one. Kraft Foods, large, a well-known brand name, of course, private fleet, working on a regionalized basis, and that's where that safety team of one comes in on. So we worked with one individual safety manager, Kraft Foods, responsible for approximately 300 drivers in his region, and their focus was fuel utilization. Their safety record was very good, but they understood speed management is a driver factor that can improve fuel MPG, and so they wanted to see what they could do to improve fuel MPG by way of speed management and other skills. They also had the ironic situation where they found themselves spending money on fuel to train fuel management. So it's not uncommon for carriers to take drivers out or have a mentor take drivers out and show them the progressive shifting, idling, maintenance, speed management, etc. But while they're out in the truck, of course, they're burning fuel to train fuel management. So they wondered about, well, is there a way to train on this topic without having to defeat the purpose of spending money on fuel? So we developed a fuel management campaign for the drivers as well as the fleet managers to get them aligned, get the buy-in on the same level. Fleet managers learned how to identify performance data, fuel MPG performance for drivers, and they learned coaching skills to improve and reward drivers doing well and coach drivers for improved performance. The training itself for the drivers included an online course in which we inserted Kraft's corporate values, and they have a corporate sustainability, care for the environment, carbon footprint statements in their corporate values. That was especially important to Kraft, that they wanted drivers to feel connected to the corporate sustainability issue and not feel that that's for other Kraft employees. It doesn't apply to drivers. They wanted to tie drivers in, and specifically what drivers could do to help Kraft, the organization, demonstrate their corporate values and reduce their carbon footprint. And it really, pointed back to what drivers could do to reduce fuel consumption. After the online course, there was a mobile simulation training provided to drivers, and this allowed drivers to use a ground simulator, a sort of realistic simulation training environment where they didn't have to get in a truck and burn fuel to learn about fuel management. They were able to practice fuel management on a simulation device instead. And after completing the online course and the simulation training, drivers received an incentive or token from Kraft, and they would collect the tokens and apply them to buying Kraft labeled merchandise, mugs, jackets, hats, that sort of thing. And so the result that the Kraft experience, they saw an immediate fuel improvement within the first 30 days of a 3% improvement, which is excellent. And I think the real incredible effort here, that their success here is that they sustained that over 6 months. And by the way, Fuel MPG is one of the fastest ROI type of training initiatives you can do. Safety initiatives can take longer to see the net result if you're looking to decrease frequency of crashes, decrease severity of crashes, turn around DOT reportable type of crashes. It takes time to see that trend line shift, but Fuel MPG is one of the faster ROI. Typically organizations with again, leadership focus, curriculum, and discipline and delivery can see an ROI usually within a month's time of training. So just an idea there for you if you're looking at that. But again, an organization, safety team of one guy, and he was able to create some amazing results for the organization just by that leadership, that vision, and a focused campaign and effort to turn around the drivers. So safety leadership, I've been mentioning that phrase, and the pattern that we see in terms of safety leadership, it really begins with you, how safe your company is, the number of crashes, accidents, incidents, workman's comp cases that happen ultimately in your organization really stem first from your attitudes and beliefs about safety, because that drives your personal behavior and what you do and what you spend time on in your job. Your behavior in turn sends a powerful message to everyone about how seriously they should take safety. So people are watching you, right? You're in a fishbowl in a sense in the safety leadership, safety management space. And truly, the real causes of crashes, when there's a root cause analysis, they often can be traced back to managers' decisions and leadership support. That's been many the case of litigation, and a worst case situation in litigation where accidents that happen and where the carrier's at fault, usually the issues can be stemmed back to process problems, management decisions, or a lack of leadership support, unfortunately. So what we advocate is, for every safety leader on the call, is to understand how important your attitudes and beliefs are and your own behavior and activities promoting safety and wellness with drivers, and how critical that is to actually activating that success formula and realizing success. So differences between leadership and management. A leader creates and communicates a vision for the future. They spend their time in that space, outlining a vision of what the to-be state could be, and less about just talking the way things are and the way they've always been. A manager develops a plan and allocates resources to achieve that vision. The leader encourages others to commit to the vision, and they do that best by involving others. They ask other people for a point of view. They engage them in constructing a vision statement or a mission statement. They engage them in what do they want to see and what safety culture do they want to see in their organization. The manager sets the objectives and organizes a schedule to attain that safety culture. The leader motivates and inspires workers to overcome personal barriers. They encourage innovation. They encourage people to challenge the status quo. A manager monitors situations. They monitor the data. They look for that trend analysis, and they react to it more commonly. A leader helps the organization to develop by adapting to changing circumstances. The manager focuses on order and efficiency and ensures standards are met. Both roles are very important. And the nature of our jobs is we are doing a lot in the management space. The reality is we have things happening every day that we have to manage, issues that arise, emergencies. We have to react to them and address them as they come up. What I want to leave you with as we continue through the rest of this presentation together is the importance of putting a foot in the leadership role and spending some time, even if it's 20% of your time during a given week, to foster the vision of a safety culture, to inspire others, to align with that safety culture, to spread the wealth of getting engaged with that, because ultimately it's those leadership qualities and people influenced by your leadership qualities that will have a net effect of improving the management, kind of reducing the burden of dealing with reacting to losses and move you actually to a loss prevention mode instead of a loss reaction mode. Ways to improve safety leadership. Well, I mentioned just a moment ago challenging the status quo. Ask yourself and ask others, are there new ways to improve health and safety in our organization? How do we take what we learn from the bad things that happen to good people? How do we learn from accidents, incidents, and driver wellness issues, workman comp claims? What do we do, take the stuff that happens. We would take, while I was at Schneider, we would have a post-mortem after crashes and incidents, and we would look at what do we need to do differently to avoid this. We can't just continue a pattern of doing what we always do. How do we take the bad thing that happened and make something good come out of it? That's a way to really assume and step into a safety leadership role. Create a vision. Consult your workforce, your staff, your team. Talk to drivers. That's always a great idea. Talk to drivers to identify and set clear wellness and safety goals. Ask drivers, what does that vision look like? What does it mean to them to belong to an organization that treats them for the professional drivers that they are and cares about their safety? Create that shared vision through these goals. Create it through involving other people in planning and decision making, and get people on the same page. And ultimately, with that effort, you're inspiring others to be safe and healthy. You're inspiring and creating the culture that you talk about in a vision. You start to actually create it by people doing it. Growth of the safety leader over time. Well, I think many of us can relate to reactive leadership. We are leaders in our safety teams. We're viewed as important folks in our role. The nature of our jobs, though, has us to responding to events that have already happened, and then we're putting out fires, if you will. And on some days it's worse than others. Ideally, over time, and again, making the effort and pushing ourselves to move towards proactive leadership, where we seek and identify hazardous conditions or patterns through analysis of our own organization's data, looking at processes critically to look at, where are processes getting us in trouble? Are they causing some of the burden? Are they causing some of these accidents and incidents? Where could we get better in that space? And then ultimately moving towards a predictive leadership where we're reaching out, we're looking at benchmark surveys, we're looking at data within the industry to anticipate and identify potential problems, bring that information back into our organizations and say, look, we see this on the horizon. Let's be preventative. Let's not wait for that law to be installed. Let's do something now. Let's get in the proactive space of anticipating and planning. So where are you spending your time? Here's another poll question. All right. So we have about half people have voted so far. All right, so we have most people have voted so far. So most folks are saying reactive leadership, 33% are in proactive leadership, and 11% in predictive. So pretty good balance, actually, of people working more on the proactive, predictive side, but the greater percentage of folks working in reactive leadership. So, well, all's not lost. There is a way to move in towards more proactive and predictive. Here's another case study with Oakley Transport, regional carrier in Florida. Challenge that they had in their leadership group is they had a safety leadership is a lack of alignment on the safety culture across all the companies. They were in an acquisition mode, had had been actively acquiring a few different companies, and they found that they were having a lack of alignment. They were very much in a reactive leadership mode, dealing with the issues of the day, and didn't have an eye out on the complexity or challenges that arise when there's conglomeration of companies under one company name. And so what they found, though, is that sort of came back and stung them when they had drivers leaving because they were not happy with the acquisition. There was poor communication. There was not alignment on operational or safety training procedures. Some drivers got upset about it, and so they kind of learned the hard way that they needed to do something about that. They did not think proactively about those being concerns or issues and the impact to drivers of those changes. Their solution was to engage all the safety managers from each of the divisions of the company. They established a driver advisory board for driver feedback so they could immediately start getting feedback from the drivers, showing that they cared, they were concerned. They opened a communication channel immediately with drivers. They focused on a fleet-wide safety briefing campaign to promote the top 3 safety concerns and encourage the networking of staff and drivers across the United organization. So they worked to proactively at that point. They were really reacting to this, but then they started to proactively plan and put forth an effort, a consistent effort on engaging safety managers, engaging drivers, the folks right at the front line of safety, and then embarked on a concentrated campaign looking at the top 3 safety concerns of the organization. The results were that they improved the ramp-up of the new acquired businesses. So they were able to work through the wrinkles of the acquisition process more quickly, driver satisfaction improved, and their driver retention ultimately improved. So again, leadership moved quickly from reactive to proactive, focused campaign, realized they needed to stem the tide of driver turnover, keep good drivers in the organization, get everyone on board, and be inclusive, not exclusive about their decision making and their efforts. Put a communication plan and campaign together, and they put discipline and delivery, and they got success from that effort. So moving towards proactive leadership, well, there's steps you can take. Let's face it, the time isn't just going to fall in your lap where you can decide to be a proactive leader. You'll have to grab it by the horns and do it. So get back your time. Just straight up, get back your time. Where's your time waste during the day? And there's scads of time logging worksheets that you can download off the internet. Franklin Covey, Mind Tools, several websites have different time allocation worksheets where you can study. Take a few weeks and just watch how you allocate your time and make a decision to get back your time. I have known people over the years that in just a serious manner they wanted to do this, and they did things like turn off their email for a day. Now that may sound like horror, I can't do that. I can't live without email for a day. But I have known leaders to do that, and they weren't worse for wear. That actually allowed them to focus and do some planning, vision-related sorts of activities, again, in that leadership space, versus reacting to every email that comes in. Let's face it, email was designed to be efficient, but it's become a time waster. So that might be something to consider. Look at how you conduct meetings. Consider cutting back on meeting time. Meet when you actually have a decision to make or work to do. Sometimes we get pulled into meetings and nothing happens. I don't know about you, but that has happened to me. When you do have meetings, and if they're your meetings you're facilitating, consider facilitating them standing up, not sitting down. That allows people to stay active, keep meetings short and to the point, a way to get back your time. Look at processes. Take some time, make some time to look at various work processes. These could be how you handle incident calls. They could be how you handle critical events, root causation, how you manage a remediation process with drivers, how you manage an orientation process with drivers. When you take a few steps back and look at your standard work processes, you might be surprised to find that there are redundancies, there's waste work, there's 2 or 3 people doing the same thing, there's gaps, there's basically there are opportunities to fix the process. Sometimes our processes become our enemy. They cause some of the burden of extra work that we put on each other's plates when they could be done more efficiently. So anytime there's an opportunity for business process review, participate in that, or maybe even activate that or lead that effort. Doesn't need to take a year. Just in a few focused sessions, you can do some business process mapping of your safety and operational processes and look for areas of improvement that save everyone time. Understand and prioritize your risks. Look at the data that you have. Even if you feel it has imperfections, look at the data you have. And there's plenty of data really out there on CSA, internal stats. Look for patterns and trends of data that show where your pain points are. Those are the areas that are probably the areas you need to focus on. And from there, prioritize what your issues or concerns are. Not everything is equally important. Ask yourself, what would happen if we didn't do something about this particular issue? Sometimes that reveals that really the net result would be acceptable. So it can help you thin out, like, what are the true risks from a loss prevention perspective, driver productivity perspective. Really understand from your own data where are areas for improvement and what are areas that can sustain themselves for a while, so you can really zero in on ultimately areas that need and require attention. Focus on morale, recognize and reward. Take the time, make the time every week to do so. This can be just rewarding people on your own team. I know someone very well, works at the safest fleet in North America that's based in Canada. Some people may know which fleet I'm talking about. And the safety leader in that organization, he takes 30 minutes every week without fail. He takes corporate labeled thank you cards, and he chooses 15 drivers from the previous week that had no incidents or accidents or call-ins or injuries, nothing. They had, were doing things, great and performing as expected. And he writes out by hand, and he writes out thank you notes and sends them to these drivers. And he makes a point to do that. Well, it's a small thing, but it's often the small things that become the big thing. That has made such an impression on the drivers and operations leaders in the organizations that many operation leaders that work in that organization have picked up the same habit. They make the time to do that. He doesn't have to do that, but he does, and it makes a big difference. Think about the fact, for those who said most of their day is reacting, who are we reacting to? We're reacting to the incident. We're reacting to the problem children. So what happens to the drivers who are doing things right? We don't need to wait until they have 1 million safe miles under their belt to reward them at a banquet. Let's consider recognizing them and rewarding them, even in a small way. Writing a note makes a big difference. People hang on to things like that. I never see people post an email, but I do see people on their bulletin boards always post thank you cards, handwritten thank you cards. So small thing could be a big idea for you to consider. And then lastly, building in continuous improvement. Proactive leadership is looking at how could we be better. Even if you're at peak performance, don't settle. Proactive leaders right now, even though the fuel prices have come down, and there's not a lot of folks complaining about the cost of fuel, it continues to be the highest operating cost, but the fuel prices are in our favor at the moment. Many organizations wait until fuel prices rise to do fuel utilization and fuel MPG improvement training with their fleet. Proactive leaders leverage the fact that the fuel prices are down and spend the time on fuel utilization training with their drivers to enhance and promote best practices. Even when the prices are good or better, they do that. And that's thinking proactively. You want to instill those good habits and skills and procedures with drivers and not wait until the fuel prices are rising. So never settle. Always look for how you could be better. That's what proactive leaders do. Another survey question. Let's just look at what folks feel is their most pressing problem. Okay, you should have the poll on your screen.
Laura, this is Tom. Once we've let everybody vote on this, you can go ahead and do the share results thing, so people can kind of see what you're able to see as well.
Okay. So we have about half the people have answered. Okay, so we have most people that answered. Well, Tom, I think I have to hit close poll, and then do I hit share results?
Yep. Yeah.
Okay, there we go. So it looks like driver recruiting and retention, not surprisingly, major problem area for folks. A lot of focus in that area. Loss prevention costs, fuel cost, and then we have CSA and driver productivity. So no surprise on driver recruiting and retention. That is the buzz all over in the industry. So loss prevention certainly was a major concern area as well. So I want to share just another quick case study here with Averitt Express. This organization was having high-frequency crashes, in particular backing, close quarter maneuvering in the first 90 days with new hires. And they also noticed in looking at their data internally, they noticed a pattern of crash severity at the 6-year, 10-year mark for their drivers. So again, an organization, they had many different types of issues that they could be focused on, but they chose to focus on these two areas of concern, figuring if we can move the needle in one of these or both of these areas, we'll be better for it. So we put together a solution where we created a driver finishing program. They had a good orientation program in place, but we extended it by a day and a half to a 5-day program. Again, an investment on their part, and the day and a half that was attached to the orientation was a immersive backing close quarter maneuvering environment sort of range course. So drivers, that's all they did for a good day and a half, almost 2 days, is immerse in backing, serpentine movements, cone courses, backing, loading dock setups, just constant practice with backing. At the same time, Averitt also identified the at-risk 10-year drivers, whether they had a crash or not. They looked at drivers that were approaching the 6-year mark or at the 6-year, 10-year mark, and they initiated through their fleet managers a checkpoint meeting with these drivers, just checking in with them, doing a safety review, not meant to say, hey, you're doing something wrong or we think you're going to do something wrong, just a touch-base meeting with drivers. And to achieve the buy-in, they used an internal marketing campaign to share why these were concern areas and recruit operations leadership to support an extended driver finishing program and a check-in point with meetings and invest the time to check in with drivers that were potentially at risk. The results that they attained within a few months of activating the 5-day orientation with the backing immersive, they reduced the backing incidents across their organization by an astonishing 80%, which is excellent. I mean, is phenomenal to be able to do. So again, leadership, focus, comprehensive focus program, and then discipline and delivery. Moving towards proactive leadership, just a few more slides speaking to this. We've all heard of the 80-20 rule, that is otherwise known as the Pareto principle of time versus results. So even though we are mostly spending our days reactive leadership, and that's 80% of a given day, what we could and should be striving for is 20% of our time, whether it's on a daily basis or weekly basis. Spending 20% of our time on high quality, high value added, leadership oriented activities that plan, predict, proactively address issues, look at trends, put programs together, talk to drivers, reward and recognition, those activities, because ultimately it's that 20% of activity and a focus in that area that creates 80% of results. So as challenging as that may feel, it is encouraging to know that you don't need to really devote a whole lot of time or completely switch up your time allocation on a daily or weekly basis to gain a lot. It really is a matter of just choosing to devote 20% or so of your time on those high value proactive leadership activities to gain an absolutely positive net benefit for your organization and for yourself. We've talked about this before, focus for results. Ask yourself when you're looking for that focus and that 20% of where to spend your time, is look at what are your pain points. Where's your time most valuable in identifying, new approaches, creating a vision for improvement, sharing that vision, getting folks involved to help them buy in, categorizing and prioritizing the issues. You cannot deal with everything, so choose the focus areas that are most important. If you're not sure, check it out with other people, and as a team decide what are the focal areas that we really want to make an impact and difference. Again, helpful to ask yourself what would happen if we didn't do anything about this. That can often help wean out maybe focus or topics that you could sustain and be okay, versus other areas from a loss prevention or safety perspective that absolutely need focused effort. Start small and then go big. Don't try to do a big campaign all over the place. Werner started small. Oakley started small. Kraft did a small regional effort. Averitt did as well. Don't try to solve the world's problems, if you will, in your first effort. Go small, measure it, manage it, see the results, and then make a decision to go big. Lastly, benchmark with other successful carriers. Safety is not a competitive issue. We all have something to gain as carriers by being safe, promoting safety with our drivers, and the motoring public has something to gain. So benchmark with companies you admire. Benchmark with the top 50 private fleets, the top 50 for hire fleets. More often than not, safety leaders in those organizations are happy to talk about things that they have done that work. They're also happy to talk about what's not worked to help you avoid making the same mistakes that they may have had and learn from. So again, I pounded this one. We have one more last slide on it, your success formula: leadership, focus, structure, curriculum, and discipline and delivery. And your probability for success goes way up if you're following this approach. And lastly here, you are the best practice. You as the safety leader have all the potential to bring the leadership to your organization, to make the change and make the difference by making the time to move from reactive leadership to proactive leadership. Work with a partner like ITI. If you have questions, you have ideas, you want to explore some opportunities, working with a partner can help you focus. It helps you focus on your core business, the things you're good at focusing on and you have the capability to address. Working with others can help put a plan together quickly for you and help ensure consistent delivery and discipline and delivery, and not take your focus off the eye or off the target you really want to attain. Lastly, that approach is the best practice. Working with your team, expanding your team, leveraging resources that can help you, that is a best practice. And with that, I'd like to say thanks again for providing your precious time on the session. Hope you folks got something out of it. And I just want you to remember that the next mile you drive is the most important one. So thanks for attending, and we look forward to seeing you on down the road.